Hello, and welcome to the Louise Elizabeth podcast. I am your host, Louise, and I am a 620-hour trauma-informed registered yoga teacher. I am a registered holistic nutritionist. I am a professional network marketer, and recently I have opened up a new business in the short-term rental field. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and this is your holistic health podcast. So health is integrated. There's many aspects to health. Health is how you live your life. It's how you feed your body, you feed your mind, how you spend your time. It is mind, body, and soul, and working on all of those things really is health to its core. So in this podcast, I dive into all topics relating to holistic health, how health is integrated, and this podcast is here to help support you in finding your own balance, finding your own flow in your life so that you can feel the absolute best, the absolute most aligned, and really just feeling at home in your own health and your own journey and how you live that life. So welcome, and here is today's episode. Hello friends! This week we are talking about yoga. We're talking specifically about yoga teacher trainings, yoga retreats, yoga trainings in general, yoga immersions. And the reason I wanted to do a podcast episode about this is because I actually get this question so much. So I figured I would do an episode about it. So what does that have to do with health and health being integrated and holistic health in general? Well, for me, it has everything to do with it because my yoga trainings, every single training I've done has an immersion I've done has absolutely changed my life. Like, it has changed my freaking life, and it's changed it in more way than one. So I'm going to share some stories with you today, and then I'll share with you some tips and tricks when looking for a yoga training of your own or yoga immersion or a teacher training to keep in mind. And so I'll share my experiences, my stories, and I'll kind of run through some of the trainings that I've done and some life-changing moments, as cheesy as they are. So hopefully this will give you the information, the tools to maybe get curious about yoga, maybe get curious about doing a training, an immersion, and or just diving more into the world of yoga. So first off, yoga has become a workout for a lot of people, or a physio tool for a lot of people. And I just want to say that that's so amazing. And I think that's perfect. And if that's the way it's evolved, to me, I know some people get a little bit bitter about it and they want to go back to the roots of yoga and all of that fun stuff. And I get where that comes from. However, I think that if it being a physio tool for somebody or a workout tool for somebody or an exercise tool for somebody, and that gets them into the yoga world and that's the first step, then I think that's beautiful and perfect. Personally, I think that if the spiritual side of things doesn't resonate with someone at the start of it, or the mindset side of things doesn't resonate with someone at the side of it, those things come organically over time. Really, I do believe it, because there's something about when you start to pay attention to your own physical body and your own physical needs and really starting to connect with your thoughts and your mind, which even if you go to a yoga class where someone doesn't have any spiritual anything or mindset or mindfulness anything in their yoga class, those things organically start to happen. Like, in my opinion, from my experience. Because when I first started yoga, I did it because I hurt myself snowboarding. And I lived in Lake Louise. And this was like, I think it was like 12 years ago. Like, I think it was it was my third winter in Lake Louise. So it would have been a decade ago, where I was just like, I hurt myself and I couldn't go snowboarding. And if you've ever been to Lake Louise, it's a tiny little freaking town. Like, there's nothing to do there. This was back before all these fancy yoga apps now where you can do a full class online. Like, the only yoga apps they had back then were DVDs with some videos, and all the DVDs I came across were way too spiritual for me, like meditating and not very fast. I was like, this is super boring. But I came across this one app. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what it is to save my life, but what it was is, like, the name of it, but what it was at the time was perfect. And it was a picture of a yoga pose, and it counted it down for 10 seconds, and then it'd have another picture. So there was no flowing about it. It was just holding poses. And for someone with a knee injury, that was actually perfect for me. And so I was curious about it because, one, I had read in a magazine about yoga, like, I read this, it was Snowboarding Canada or something, and they had interviewed a bunch of professional athletes. And one of the things that they were talking about were injuries. It's funny how things work, right? So here I am injured, my knee's swollen, my knee's not doing good, and I'm just reading a snowboarding magazine at work when it's dead. And it interviewed a bunch of people, and it interviewed them about professional athletes, professional snowboarders, and it interviewed them about injuries. And what did they do? What was their prevention? What did they do to help? And a really reoccurring thing that popped up was yoga, 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 yoga. So I was like, all right, I'll try this. So I tried that app that I mentioned, and it really, I started to feel not only better faster, but I was feeling stronger. And then I was going on my snowboard and I noticed I was stronger. So I was like, this is interesting. So I kept up with that weird little app of counting down the photos. And so the only place that they really had yoga back at that time for me anyway was in Banff. And I went to, I won't say where, it wasn't a studio. I went to a class, and I just remember having a really awful experience, like being straight up honest. I went to this class. And I told the teacher I had never been to a class before. And she said, cool, just watch the people around you. Which, to be fair, I say that to beginners too. I'm like, yeah, just watch the people around you. Don't be so worried. Don't be, don't be too like meh about it. Meh. Don't be worried about anybody else. They're not watching you, but if you watch them, that's fine. And we were set up in a circle with the mats. And the yoga teacher didn't leave her mat the entire time. So I just felt really disconnected. I felt really out of place. And I honestly didn't enjoy the experience, but it didn't turn me off yoga. So that was sometime wintertime. And then that fall, after the summer, they were trying something out, and they were doing a yoga interpretive hike. So they had a Parks Canada hiking guide and a yoga teacher from Golden, funny enough. And they partnered together to do this yoga interpretive hike. And this is when I was working back at daycare in the summers, still part-time. And the lady came in, and she just said they weren't like really marketing it. They kind of wanted to keep it with like locals and make it a local thing to test this out and see if it was a great idea and it would take off. And so for me, that was my first yoga immersion experience. And it was a day trip, and it was beautiful. It was my first time really properly doing yoga with a yoga teacher, and we did meditation outside. We did a seated meditation outside. We did breathwork, pranayama. We did breathwork and pranayama a few different times. We did silent walking meditation. We did some flowing, and she kind of introduced all the different limbs and aspects to yoga. And I remember just being like, oh my God, that was amazing. And I had the absolute best time ever. So it got me curious about yoga, and I started to dive in a little bit more, and kind of still the apps weren't amazing. So let's fast forward to when I decided to leave Lake Louise after, I forget how many years, but I decided to leave Lake Louise that summer. So this will be almost 9 years ago that we moved to Whistler, my ex-partner and I, and my uncle had passed away, and he had no kids to leave anything to, so it was me and my sister and my cousins who were left his life insurance. And so moving to a new town, and previous to that, actually, I should rewind a few months, I was trying to find a yoga teacher training because there were no yoga classes near me. There was nothing, no apps online. And I thought, okay, well, if I just like do a training to learn about yoga and how to do it, then like I can't think of anything more perfect. Then I can just kind of do it, right? So everything I came across were actually really generic forms online. It was like first name, last name, middle initial, your address, fill this out, and pay basically. But there wasn't like any information, and I was just trying to inquire like if this would be a good fit because of where I was at. So I tried to find a couple places like in Calgary, like I didn't have to go far kind of thing. And I remember just being like, oh, this just feels like so wrong. And then fast forward back to when we're moving to Whistler, and I just had this gut feeling like, maybe I'll see, if there's anything in that area. And it's really interesting the way the universe works. It works perfectly. I seriously think like when you're just like patient and you trust, even if we want these things right away, like if we just trust, the things come to us. And so I was like, well, I really, really, really want to learn more about yoga. So I'm just going to kind of search around again and see what comes up. So again, the way the universe works is perfect. So I found this woman named Julia McCabe, and she teaches a lot in Squamish and Vancouver at the time. And she was doing a teacher training in Pemberton. So for those that don't know Whistler, Pemberton's about 30 minutes north of Whistler, so it's not far. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I started reading more, and she actually had way more information on her website. And her way of connecting about it, instead of filling out this really generic form, was, hey, this is a bunch of stuff about me. Send me an email about you, and let's see if this would be a good fit. And I was like, oh, way better. So not only was that already so much better, the experience, I sent her an email and I told her my story, and we kind of went back and forth, and I was just like, this is going to be perfect, because a lot of teacher trainings, especially 200 hours and also 300 hours, but they tend to be just like 21 days you're immersed in it, or 28 days for a 300 hour. And the way hers was structured was actually doing 7 days with a 3-week gap, and then doing 7 days with a 2-week gap before doing the final 7 days. And for someone like me, that was perfect, because I think if I had immersed myself for 21 days, which I'll talk about these at the end, it would have been a lot. So, so with my uncle's gift to me and my sister, and it meant I didn't have to work right away, and I was like, what better way to make new friends in a town who seem to be into the same things I am? And I remember thinking, like, yoga people just want to be happy. So I immersed myself in it, and I had my teacher training, and again, I come out on the other side, and I won't get into too many stories from there, but it was amazing, and it changed my life. So that was my 200-hour teacher training. So about 5 years ago now, 5 years ago, I realized, like, so 4 years after my 200-hour, I was like, I want to learn more. And I'll talk about 200 hours and things to watch for. But I was just like, I just felt like I knew nothing about the human body. And I wanted to learn more, and I'd kind of been looking for things. And Julia McCabe, again, was actually doing a 100-hour training specifically for yoga teachers, specifically anatomy, and specifically for injury prevention and supporting of injuries on the other side for people as well. So I was like, amazing. So that was in Tofino. I spent, what was it? I think it was 10 days it was 14 days. So it was 2 weeks, 100 hours. And that was amazing. Had a great time. Came out on the other side feeling even more empowered to teach, because when you do a 200-hour teacher training, you go into it thinking, I know nothing, and you come out on the other side thinking, I still know nothing. There's so much to learn. So I did my 100-hour, and that was amazing and perfect. So I knew I wanted to do a 300-hour teacher training, but I realized at this point, like, from my experiences, and I'll share more when I get to that. Right now, I'm just kind of sharing my journey with my different trainings and immersions, and I just knew that at the end of it, that I really wanted to do a 300-hour, but I really wanted to do it with teachers who had a very strong practice, because I wanted to advance my own physical practice. So I really wanted to make sure that the teacher that I did it with, I really resonated with and could physically push me, because like of course you wanted to resonate with your teacher. And again, I'll talk about this. Yes, all the theory and stuff, but there are still standards. So I wasn't really too worried about the theory. I really physically wanted to have an experience as well. So as much as I knew I wanted to do my 300-hour, I wasn't rushing into one, and I was really being patient with it. And I met at the Banff Yoga Festival. I had my first experience of Erin Evans, and she actually had a workshop there, which, by the way, if you ever get to go to a yoga festival, that's also a great way to immerse yourself in yoga and have an experience and come out on the other side a different person for it. I highly recommend doing a wide variety of teachers, a wide variety of classes, and going for the weekend and basically doing as many as you physically can, because that will also give you an immersion experience with yoga. But anyway, so I was at the Banff Yoga Festival, and I remember going to a bunch of classes, but specifically I went to this one. It was an assisting class for teachers. So it was a workshop specifically for yoga teachers to come and learn about physical assists. And if you've ever met Erin Evans, she's just like this tiny woman with a big personality, big heart, and she just holds presence in the room. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And so this workshop was great, and she actually dropped a couple F-bombs, which, depending on who you talk to, they'll be like, never swear. And people say that about business too. Don't ever swear on your Instagram. You know what? Like, words only have power behind them because you decide to give them. So anyway, she dropped an F-bomb, and there was nothing unprofessional about it for me. Actually, what I remember thinking when she dropped the F-bomb, I just looked and I was like, I really like this teacher. So she has a very strong practice. She has a very, obviously her way of teaching and everything is amazing as well. And I just loved her. So I had her on my forecast. I started following her on social media and paying attention. And then so that was in the summertime, springtime, I forget. Don't ask me years, please. But that fall, Vince and I went on a 6-week road trip, and we were down in the States. And we were going on a road trip. We started in Smith Rock, and one of our friends said, oh, like Sonny Trotter is on a road trip with his family climbing too. So he's a Canadian. He's a professional Canadian climber. And so our friend mentioned him, and we're like, okay, yeah. So we kind of checked him out on Instagram just because. I personally don't really get so crazy over famous people sometimes, but especially at that point where I wasn't as into climbing as I am now. But yeah, we just kind of creeped him, and I noticed I went and creeped his wife, who was also a yoga teacher and based out of Canmore and or Squamish, depending on the season. And so she had a very strong practice, and so I started following and creeping her, whatever. And so anyway, I had her and Erin Evans kind of in my forecast, and when did it start? It would have been fall 2018. They were starting a 300-hour yoga teacher training, and the way it was set up was 1 weekend a month for 11 months. Now, I know that you can do the full 28 days for 21 days, and I'll tell you why I was not looking for that format again when I get into the tips and tricks to finding your own that works for you. But I was like 1 weekend a month, and I actually thought it had started earlier than it did. So I remember reaching out and kind of asking about it, and then being like, oh, I can't really make that happen. I can't really make June happen. And they got back and they were like, no, it's not June. It's September, October. I forget exactly when it started, but they were like, no, it doesn't start till fall. And I was like, oh, cool. And they offered a payment plan, which was even better because I was also doing my holistic nutrition study. So I had that tuition to pay for. And I was like, yep, cool, let's do this. So I ended up doing my 300-hour with them, 1 weekend a month for 11 months. And we started or maybe it was spring. I don't know. Anyway, we started and it was all in person. However, the last 3 months or the last 2 months had to be on Zoom because of COVID. So we did have to finish online. So now, again, this all is relevant, I promise. So, so those were the trainings I did. And then I also did a 20-hour trauma-informed yoga training. Now, yoga is a strong word for that training. It's really to give you a trauma lens for a lot of health professionals. I mean, we did do teaching kind of the trauma yoga class experience, and went through that, and that was really awesome too. But I think calling it a yoga training is really a strong statement. So yeah, those are all the trainings I've done. I did 2 days of Wanderlust when I lived in Whistler, and that was amazing. The Pemberton Yoga Festival I did for a weekend, and I have also participated in the Banff Yoga Festival. So just so you know, those are all the immersions that I've had, the trainings that I have. I've never been to a yoga retreat, and again, I'll talk about that in a little bit, and why, based on my personal choice. But my why on why I've chosen not to do yoga retreats might be your why on why you do choose to do yoga retreats. So just keep that in mind. Everything that I'm about to share with you on things to keep in mind, and I'll share why I made the decisions that I made and why I suggest some of the things that I suggest based on my decisions. They might be reasons why you choose to do something different than what I chose, okay? So I just want to pre-frame, I don't have any children, okay? I have a dog, and the work that I was doing for all those trainings was very flexible in the schedule. Now, that being said, the trainings that I did, generally speaking, someone who works full-time and can't take a month off work, the format that I did actually works really well for in-person. So let's talk about it. Let's start with, you know what, I'm gonna say it out loud, and I'm gonna make a list to make sure that I get through everything. So let's talk about immersions, and then we'll talk about trainings, and making a list so I don't forget. Retreats, and immersions, trainings, retreats, and that's basically it. Oh, festivals, that's what I wanted to talk about as well. Okay, so I'll start with yoga festivals since that's not really they're quite flexible. As for if yoga festivals are even happening in 2023, I honestly don't know. I haven't looked into them. But I will just say quickly, if you do get a chance to go to a yoga festival, I 10 out of 10 recommend it. Because generally speaking, you get a ticket for a weekend, or you get a ticket for the Friday or just the Saturday or just the Sunday, whatever it is. And basically what it is they have this schedule. There tends to be a handful of classes at the same time, but there's a handful of classes and a wide variety. So the cool thing about yoga festivals is, one, you get to make friends with strangers, or you go with a friend and you have an epic weekend together. Two, you actually get to try a lot of different styles. Now, that is something that I recommend in general with yoga. If you're new to it, or even if you've been in it for a while, is try all the different styles, try the different teaching styles, try the different intensity levels. You get to go to workshops and break down things, like things that you don't get to do in your typical yoga class. Not that I think there's anything wrong with a studio, but your vinyasa class is your vinyasa class. They don't tend to really go too far from what they are. Doing classes online, yeah, cool, that's very convenient, affordable. I totally get why we sign up for a platform online. I have my monthly platform that I participate in, Practice with Lydia. She's my absolute favorite, and I'll actually put a link in the show notes where you can go and check it out if you're looking for someone to practice with online who's actually really good at doing the wide variety of classes and keeping you engaged even though you're doing a class through the computer. But if you get the chance to go to a festival, it's amazing. You get to try a wide variety of classes, which is something that I always recommend, and trying different styles. So this is good for someone if you want to be a student forever, to get clear on what kind of yoga you love, what teachers you love. You're not going to love every single teacher, and that's fine too. And teachers are teachers to be. Not everybody's going to love you. And the sooner that you recognize that, own it, and just be like, that is fine, the sooner that you make the space for the students who are just going to freaking love you, your style, and your personality, okay? So that's what festivals are really great for. And it's nice to just have a weekend to just do a bunch of yoga and fluff around and have a great time. So that's that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about are retreats. So personally, I have never run one. I've run like a day one in Golden in Revelstoke, and I'd be into doing a day one again, but if I'm really honest, retreats just don't align with me. I've never run one and I've never been to one. So when I want to go and immerse myself in some yoga, and I just want to like simmer in some yoga, I just want to be doing a bunch of yoga. Like, if I'm being totally honest, I want that more like really pushing myself side of things. And the thing with retreats is they tend to be geared towards everybody, which is perfect and fine. So generally speaking, the classes tend to be a little bit softer. They tend to be a little bit, you're not doing as much of the physical side of things. You maybe get like an hour and a half class in the morning and an hour and a half class in the evening, and the evening ones tend to be gentle. And then it's a lot of like free time and doing things that you want, which for some people, that is why a yoga retreat is perfect. You have a really stressful job. Maybe you're a parent and you just need a week away from your family. Like, whatever it is, a yoga retreat makes perfect sense because it is so relaxed, because you don't do 3 hours of yoga, you do the hour and a half in the morning and the gentle in the evening, and then you have all day to, maybe you go to like a workshop here and there, but you tend to also have a lot of free time in retreats. So me, and the way I love to travel, that just doesn't quite work. I would rather go somewhere on vacation and be on vacation and find out what yoga classes they have at their public studio and bring myself to some yoga classes and then go and do the exploring that I want to be doing. Now, a retreat that I could potentially see myself doing and signing up for would be a retreat that has some adventure side to it. So maybe we are going for big hikes every day, or we're going split boarding, like it's a girls thing, and going split boarding. Like, that's the kind of retreat I can see myself either participating or hosting. Or as much as I always say I hate surfing because I freaking hate the ocean. Okay, I don't hate the ocean, it just scares the crap out of me. I could see myself going on a surfing retreat where there is instruction on how to surf as a part of the retreat. So for me, a retreat that would work really well that also involves some sort of like coaching or teaching in a specific sport. So again, that's me and my style and what I resonate with. The whole other, the more typical retreats that are run, they're just not for me. I have no beef against them, but just for those of you that are thinking about doing a retreat, that keep that in mind. Do you want to relax and just unwind for a week, and it's better than, going to an all-inclusive resort, or the idea of traveling around and having to go all these places and whatnot? Then that's perfect. That's fine. I think that that's beautiful, and a yoga retreat is perfect for you. What I will say about yoga retreats to keep in mind, if you can, do a class with the teacher beforehand so that you actually know that you resonate with this person who's going to be guiding you along for a week and supporting you for a week. I mean, I kind of am going to suggest that for everything for the next few things, but really just be clear on that and make sure it's someone that you align with and that you really enjoy and that you want to learn from and move with and grow with, because you'll still grow in a retreat. There'll still be some digging deeper. But so that's yoga retreats. The next thing I want to talk about are yoga immersions. So yoga immersions, they're like a yoga retreat, but different. So yoga immersion, generally speaking, is like a workshop for several days in a row, however many days that is. And that is literally what it sounds like. You're immersing yourself in yoga. So for me, that yoga, oh my God, that interpretive yoga hike, that was a 1-day immersion for me, right? We just did yoga basically all day in different sorts of forms and shapes and whatever it was, and talked about it and got some of the mindset in there and all that fun stuff. So yoga immersion is very similar to that. What I will say about a yoga immersion to keep in mind is that in theory, it should be different than a retreat. It should be a lot less relaxing and a lot more like learning and like a little like yoga school, we'll say, for 3 days, but it's not a teacher training. It's not, you're coming out on the other side with a certificate. So yoga immersions can actually be really great for people who are like, you know what, I don't want to do a yoga teacher training, but I would love to get a taste of what it might be like, or I would love to really advance my practice and have that yoga teacher training experience without committing to a yoga teacher training. So yoga immersion is a really great option as well. It's lots of fun, and it is still a great way to get that teaser. If you live in Golden, one will be coming your way in the springtime. So end of April is kind of the tentative decision. So make sure you reach out to me if you're like, ooh, I kind of would love to hear those deets. Even if you live kind of near Golden and you want to come into Golden, a few of us are thinking we could arrange an Airbnb and kind of stay there, get a hot tub, and actually relax for those days as well. So a yoga immersion is amazing. It is really like such a great way to get a little teaser on what a training might be. So maybe you do want to do a yoga teacher training in the future as well, and you're like, I don't know, like I'd love to get a little taste of it. Or maybe you've done a yoga teacher training and you're like, I would love to just have that feeling, that community feeling again, because there is no other feeling. Like I've never experienced growth and community and sisterhood. I've just had mostly women in my trainings when I've done them, that feeling of sisterhood like you do when you go on the journey that you go on when you're in a yoga teacher training. It's amazing. Okay, so those are immersions. Now, I saved the yoga teacher training thing for last, tips and tricks, because this is the one that I get the most questions about. The other one's not so much, but I just wanted to give you some insight and some things to consider. But this is one that when it comes to your yoga teacher training and deciding and picking one, straight up, I'm going to say it, don't make that decision lightly. Like, you are going on a journey with someone. You're going to trust cracking your heart open. You're going to trust getting vulnerable, because the thing is you generally speaking, you do about 3 hours of yoga in the morning, and then you're doing posture clinic and you're learning. And it gets to the point where even if you do the weekend format that I did, that you are just too tired to have a mask on. So you really get vulnerable. You really open up with people. And so that's why you shouldn't take it lightly. And this is one of those times where I am consciously using the word shouldn't. Those of you that listen to my podcast a lot, or you know me at all, you know I don't like the word should. But this is one of those times where I am consciously making the decision to use that word, because you should consider who, and you should not make it lightly, who you're doing your yoga teacher training with, because you are cracking yourself open for this person. So let's talk about teacher training and the decisions and the things to consider and a lot of the questions that I get. So the first one is who you're doing with. If you can take a class with them, go in person or do a class with them online, or actually learn and connect with them, because this person, for a couple reasons. One, like I said, you're going on a journey with this person. You're getting vulnerable with them. You're going to open up with them. You're going to have to trust them with your physical body. You're going to have to trust them with your heart and your mind and your soul. Like, you're literally going to have to trust this person. So you want to make sure that you can trust this person and open up to this person, one, when it comes to that. Two, you want to enjoy the yoga that they're teaching. One, even if you don't want to be a teacher on the other side of it, like, you want to enjoy, because you're going to be learning from this person and you're going to be doing 3 hours of yoga with them, on average about 3 hours of yoga with them every single day for 21 days, whether it's 21 days in a row or broken up or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're going to be doing so much yoga with them. You really want to enjoy the style that they teach, okay? You're not going to enjoy every person's style that they teach, and that is totally fine. That is absolutely fine. But you want to make sure that you enjoy the style that you teach, is one. Two, if you do want to be a teacher on the other side, you want to make sure that you enjoy the style that this person teaches and that you want to learn from them. Because when you come out on the other side as a new yoga teacher, it's super unintentional and it's just organically what happens. You are going to teach in the same style as that person, because they're going to teach you the same style that they teach. And that's fine. You know, it takes some time to find your voice when you're out of a 200 hour. So if you're going into one or you think about going into one, you're like, oh, how can I teach like me on the other side? Trust me, you'll find your voice. It will take some time. But the more you tap into your own personal practice, the stronger your own voice comes out on the other side. But when you're picking who to learn from, that's really important, because you will come out sounding like them, teaching their style, and you will mirror them for a while until you find your own flow, your own style, you're feeling empowered in your own way of teaching. So that is something to really consider, is who are you learning from, for that reason too. So the who are you going to learn from is a big one. Most teachers will kind of outsource other people for maybe like the anatomy, or like if they, like in my 200 hour, we had someone come in to teach yin because it just wasn't her zone of genius. So she hired someone who that was their zone of genius, and we had a yin practice with this person and an afternoon of learning about yin. So they most likely will outsource at least one teacher for at least one part or two. And so, you know, that maybe doesn't factor in as much, but whoever is leading it, whoever's running it, whoever's in charge, that is really the person you want to be learning from. The other thing that I'll say about what teacher training to choose, so this is like, someone's probably going to be triggered or be like, I can't believe Louise said that, but I am a non-fluff person. So going to Bali or going to Mexico or going to all these tropical places and doing a month in these beautiful settings or going to India and just like doing it in these places that you think are like traditional or whatever it is. I just want to say that is a bit of a marketing scheme, and it shouldn't be an ultimate deciding. Another should, and really ideally isn't one of the deciding factors on if you do or don't do a training. I know people who went to India, for example, and because my second season in Japan, she was there. So I would have only been a teacher for about 2 years. And she comes up to me the one day and she's like, how do you teach like that? Like, how much training have you had? And I was like, oh, just like, I literally just my 200 hour, but I had a power vinyasa teacher. So we had a lot of anatomy cueing, and she's been teaching for like a decade at that point. Like, she was a really strong teacher. And, you know, I learned that from my teacher. Like, that's it. I only have 200. And she couldn't believe that I only had a 200 hour yoga teacher training, because she did her 200 hour teacher training and she wanted to go to India because she thought that was like the traditional thing and going to the roots of it. And she said if she had known what she was doing, she wouldn't have signed up for that teacher training. She said, however, I do just want to say, like, it was a great experience to do that because I just went on a journey. Like, she felt like it was more like a 21-day yoga retreat than it was a 21-day yoga teacher training. So as much as going to some of these places and going to Bali and going to all these, like, whatever, Mexico things, like, again, make the teacher who you're learning from part of like one of the main reasons why you choose what you choose versus I just want to go to Mexico to do it, or I just want to do this to do it. So that kind of naturally, organically leads me into the format that you can do it in. So the first in 2023 obvious one is, do I do it in person or do I do it online? Now, I understand that doing it in person, generally speaking, isn't as cost efficient. I understand that doing it in person is a little trickier for some people because you have to take some time off. So I do understand that that is a privilege and something that you have to be able to do, an opportunity that you can do. I will say, if you have the choice and it's something that you can do, I 10 out of 10 recommend doing it in person. Like, without a doubt in my mind. One, you will, and if you can, a live one. So I know some of the 200-hour teacher trainings online, you can just buy the course and do it at your own pace. Again, I understand the advantage of that. However, if it's a cost thing and you actually want to teach yoga on the other side of it, if you can, do it in person, or if you can, at least do a live one, even if it's online. Because one, yeah, you're learning to be a teacher, but you really go on a journey. In your teacher training, you go on a journey. And if you can just go and immerse yourself for, if you do it like 1 week, and then like I did for my 200-hour for a week, or a weekend like I did for my 300-hour, like, you get to know the other people in your training. It's such a beautiful experience of connecting with other people, and it's like, it's so amazing. It really is so freaking amazing, and you will have such an amazing time and experience. Doing it online in a live setting, I understand, has its advantages again. You'll still get some connection, but it's just still not the same as being in the room with someone, like sweating side by side and physically pushing each other and watching each other grow and having those conversations. Like, yeah, you can still have the conversations on Zoom, but it's not the same as like being in a circle and sharing versus like, put your hand up on Zoom kind of thing. You just don't connect on the same level. And the self-paced one, again, I understand the advantage of that. It's so much less personal. So it is something to consider. Again, I do understand online. I do always recommend, if you can, do it in person. If you can, at least do a live one. Do a live one, even if it's on Zoom. It's just a whole other experience, and you're investing the money. And I get maybe self-paced is $2,000 versus in person's $3,000 or $4,000. But the journey that you go on and the learning experience that you have, to me, is worth that extra chunk of change. It really is. And I know that's just not pocket change when we're talking about $1,000 or $2,000. It is worth it. It is totally worth it, because you come out on the other side a different person. You come out on the other side just like learning, expanding, growing. And I just don't see how the self-paced course does the same. I just don't see it, and I just don't believe that it does. My 300-hour, I started in person and finished online, and we'd had such a connection with each other at that point that online didn't feel quite as disconnected. But for someone like me, like, it was really hard to pay attention online. It was really hard to get as engaged online as I am in the room, sitting there with the people around me. So it is something to consider with your yoga teacher training, is the format that it's being delivered in. For me, the style of not having to do 21 days in a row worked perfect, and that actually reminds me that I wanted to share. So I did 100-hour, which was 14 days in a row. And I remember at the end of those 14 days, personally, I was just pooched. I was straight up pooched. I was so tired. I was so sore. Mind you, I was sleeping in my van as well. Like, I wasn't like sleeping in like a nice bed, but still, like, I was just pooched. And I remember saying, like, I don't know if I could have handled 21 days in a row yoga teacher training. Now, that in mind, my goal, and I have slowly, very, 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 very slowly started to create a 200-hour manual, because I would like to host those trainings, 200-hour yoga teacher trainings. But yeah, I just remember like being like, I just am so pooched. So I do want to do those, and I would want to do them as a 21-day in a row thing, but I would probably plan it where we actually get some days off, so it ends up being more like 28 days for the 200-hour teacher training. But the week format and the 1 week in a month format, especially the 1 week in a month for 300 hours specifically, is I could go and learn and implement for a month in my teaching without feeling like I had an information overload too much. So that was pretty cool too. But I do see the advantage if you do find the teacher and you do find the location that works for you, and you can just go and literally just be in a yoga bubble for a month. That also sounds amazing. So I think that all comes down to, what works, what doesn't work. But I will say, if I did a month-long yoga training, I would not be sleeping in my van in a camping ground with my partner. And, I would want to stay in like an Airbnb or a house or something where I could, just have a bit more space and be a little bit warmer, because it was springtime. So it wasn't like super, super, super warm. But yeah, so those are my journeys. Those are my tips and tricks when considering your own trainings, retreats. But as always, like really for all of them, at the end of the day, really find out who you are doing these things with and make sure that you connect with them. And if you don't, that's fine. There will be a training, there will be an immersion, there will be a retreat, or whatever it is that you're looking for with someone that you do connect with, that is the one that's right for you. And as much as it's something that you want to do, just be patient with it and use it as an opportunity that you don't have to do a payment plan, and save money for it. And so that when the time hits and when the perfect one hits, you're ready for it. Because that's what happened with me, my 200 hour. My 100 hour. Actually, that happened with all of them. My 200 hour, it ended up being perfect for me. And it was all because I was filling out this other form and just recognized that it wasn't. This, like, I was like, I'm filling out this generic form for yoga training. That just seems like meh to me. And in my experience of talking to other people and their experiences with their 200 hours, like, I am so grateful for my experience. It was a small training, and even my 300 hour, all of them, on purpose, no more than like 13, 14 students. Like, that is the max. And, you talk to other people that are, there's like 100 people in their 200 hour. There's 50 people in their 200 hour. They don't even get to connect with their main teachers. I'm like, ooh, that doesn't sound amazing. So really, like, things like that, the numbers, and are they keeping it small and intimate, or are they just trying to get as many people in there? Like, really, those things make a big difference. But if you're patient and you just trust and know that you will find the one where you can have an amazing experience, it is possible to have an amazing experience. But it is also possible to not, and get sucked into, trying to save some money, which, again, I understand saving money, especially when everything's freaking inflated. I understand. But I want you to ask yourself, okay, at what cost? At what cost am I saving money on this training? At my experience, at the level of teaching that I'm going to get, at the level of, who I'm learning from, where I'm learning it, like all of those things. So really just questions to ask yourself, and just know and trust that whatever answer does come up, like that is the answer. Yeah, so if you can avoid rushing into it and make a big difference, I promise. Okay, so that episode, hopefully that is useful. I know this is something I'll definitely be recommending to all the people that love to ask me about yoga trainings and which ones they want to do and how to find them, and some questions. This is info-packed 42-minute podcast episode for you. So as always, please share this. If you're listening to this, a friend that is interested in any of these things, share this with them. Share this if you gain some value. It would mean so much to me. Tag I am Louise Elizabeth. I will put Lydia's link in the show notes as well. And I will also share my info too. So wherever you are, have a beautiful day,